Making YTPs is a lot easier than you might think. There are some tricks to it, but I'll teach you the basics of what I do in two different programs, Vegas Pro and DaVinci Resolve. Long story short, there's no secret, it's just motion graphics. Of course, what I'm showing you here is literally just the basics of video editing. But using this as a starting point, you'll be able to understand how other people make complex edits a little bit more easily. So why don't we start in Vegas first? This is the first video editor I ever used, and it was extremely popular back in the early 2010s for reasons. I have some practice media here, nothing crazy. Let's go ahead and import that right into Vegas. Now when we drag one of these down into the timeline, it creates a new track depending on what kind of media we dragged onto it, video or audio. We'll work with audio a little bit later. Right now, let's just focus on video. Now, just for fun, what if we wanted to have King Harkinian here wear the top part of this little FL Studio fruit icon as a hat? I mean, it'd be funny, who knows? So let's make another video track above this one. We're going to right-click over here and hit Insert Video Track. And that creates a new video track at the very top. So let's drag our FL Studio fruit right here. And we've layered them nicely with Harkinian underneath the fruit. Now let's go to the first frame, and we want to stop the video in the back from moving because when we press play, you can see it shoots forward at lightning speed. So we're going to right-click this clip, go to Insert, Remove Envelope, and hit Freeze Frame at Cursor. So now when we play it back, there's no movement. Perfect. Now if we take a look at this clip of this FL Studio fruit, over here on the right side of the clip, we have three little nice buttons. This one right here opens up the Video Event Pan Crop window, which allows us to manipulate our media in the video. But you'll see that it cuts off at the edge there when I try to drag this box over to the left. That's not good. So what we want to do is right-click, hit Match Output Aspect, and that changes the borders of this little box here to match the output aspect of the video, no matter what aspect ratio your video is set to. So now when we drag it off to the end, it properly cuts off at the end of the frame. So let's move this someplace where we want it to be so we can see things a little bit easier, right? Now this is great. We have the fruit layered on top of Harkinian, but the fruit itself is in the way. We want to get rid of this part, and we just want the top leaves and stem to make a little hat for Harkinian. So what we need to do is make a mask. And to do that, you'll go down here to this lower left corner and enable the mask parameter. Make sure that this little timeline playhead here is on the first frame all the way to the left, right? Now we can zoom in and we can grab this and move around. Let me make it a little bit bigger so you can see what we're looking at here. And we have several tools over here to the left. The one we want is this anchor creation tool right here, or press the D key, which I'm going to do right now to demonstrate. Voila! Now we can just start clicking anywhere to start masking out our subject. I'm going to fast forward through this part so you don't get bored. I may or may not have stolen that line from DaVinci. Okay, so that's done-ish. But if we look, you see it's all janky, it's very jagged, it's not nice and smooth like we want it to be. So to make our mask follow the contours of this nice little set of leaves, if you move your cursor over one of these nodes and hold the Control key while clicking it, it changes it to a Bezier curve. And now we can manipulate the curve to more closely mask out our subject. And again, I'm going to fast forward through all of this so it's a little bit easier for you. Now, I do have a 4K screen, which is why all of my nodes look absolutely pathetically small. If you have a regular 1080p panel, it's not going to look like this. Your nodes will be a little bit bigger and easier to manipulate. I just like to torture myself with high DPI screens. To create a new anchor anywhere along this path you've created, you can just hold the Control key and click, and that places a new node. And there we go. I'd say that looks pretty good. It's a lot smoother now and looks a little bit more presentable. All right, now we have our little leaf hat masked out for Harkinian, but he's a little too high up. Why don't we move him down a bit? So we'll open the video event pan crop for this window. Now over here on the left side, you'll see a little tool that allows you to change whether or not you move freely in the X and Y coordinates, or just in X, or just in Y. This makes it a lot easier for linear movement directly left and right or up and down. So what I'm going to do right now is move him down a little bit. And then we'll go back to position here on the fruit, and we can move the fruit. If you hold the Shift key while moving something, you can bypass snapping. And you can rotate it by grabbing this little circle here. And that will rotate your subject. And then we can move it into place wherever we like. So now he's got this nice little leaf hat. It's just a silly little edit, right? Now, what if we wanted to follow him while he's moving? And that's where keyframing comes in. So what we're going to do is we're going to right-click this video media down here at the bottom, and we're going to turn off the velocity parameter. So now when we press play, he starts moving again. To get it to start following him, what we're going to have to do is keyframe the position of this element in relation to the movement on screen. So to do that, we're going to go all the way back to the first frame here and click this little button here in the video event pan crop window. That syncs up the cursor on the main timeline with the one in the viewer here. So now when I drag this, it follows the video. And that makes it so much easier for us. What we're going to do is we're going to go to position, and we're going to move ahead. I think I can use the page up and page down keys. Yes, to move between frames. Well, that's not working because it's going by 2 frames instead of 1. Editor's note, this is because I wasn't zoomed in far enough, and because I had the timeline grid set to notes instead of frames. Now, this GIF runs at 10 frames per second, but the timeline I'm using right now is a standard 30 frames per second for like YouTube or something like that. So each frame of the GIF takes up 3 frames on the timeline. And what we can do is we can set this frame right here to be a hold frame. So that way there's no interpolated movement between frames. It just jumps and snaps between each one. So if I were to go back to the main timeline and jump ahead to the next frame where he starts to move, I can now create a new position here and rotate it a little bit. And that automatically creates a new keyframe. And we can click between them to see our changes. It moves a little bit too much, so I'll go back in and move it back over to the right a little bit, so it's not as much of a movement. That looks a little bit better. Change the rotation a little bit. This is where it gets really tedious. You're going to be doing this frame by frame, but trust me, the result is going to be worth it. You'll see why in just a few moments. So we'll go forward a few more frames. Let me small this window a little bit. You can dock these windows, but I like to keep this one undocked. It's a little bit easier for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump forward 3 frames, move our subject, and rotate it a little bit. See our movement. By the way, when I'm on the main timeline, you can use the page up and page down keys to advance by 1 frame exactly, forwards or backwards. All right, now once you finish, you'll see a whole bunch of keyframes down here in this window. And the red color indicates that these are hold frames. So any frames in between won't have any movement. So now when we play it back, it roughly follows where he's moving. Congratulations! You just learned how to mask and rotoscope. Of course you can go back in and fix up some of these frames to make it a little bit smoother, but what if I told you there's a far easier way to do it with a much better program? And that's where DaVinci Resolve is going to come in. So let's hop on over to Resolve, This is one of my favorite video editors of all time. It's my ultimate favorite, honestly. Resolve makes things so much easier, especially for motion graphics. YouTube poop is like nothing to Resolve. So let's go ahead and drag our practice media into the media pool, and we'll put King Harkinian onto a new track right here. Now, this is a special GIF that I had to make, or GIF. I call them GIFs. Don't make fun of me. This is a special one I had to make for Resolve because for some weird reason, Resolve does not resolve the frame rate pacing of the original CDI Zelda GIFs that I have for some dumb reason. So I had to speed them up to ridiculous speed, and then I had to change the speed over here from 60 frames per second to 12, and that way it actually plays back on a 60 frames per second timeline at the correct speed. So let's go ahead and drag our FL Studio Fruit. We'll put it right on top. And we want to mask out the top part again, right? So we're going to do that again, but this time we're going to go down here to the color page. My taskbar down here looks a little bit different than yours might, because if you go over to Workspace, you can select which pages are visible. There are 7 different pages in Resolve for a different part of the editing workflow, and I don't need to use media or cut. I just use Edit Fusion, Color, Fairlight, and Deliver. So we're going to jump over to the color page while we have the FL Studio Fruit selected. And that brings up this nice little window here. We have our viewer, and we have our node tree over here, and a whole bunch of stuff down here. We're just going to work in this window right here. You might see something familiar. Just like in Vegas Pro, we have an anchor creation tool. So you just click that and literally start clicking anywhere. And that creates new nodes for us to mask out our subject with. Now, what's cool about Resolve is it makes it so much easier to move around the workspace while you're masking, because I can use the middle mouse key to grab any part of the video and move around in 2D space. And I can zoom in and out at my leisure. Resolve has a cool way of making Bezier curves. You just hold the Control key and drag out from the center of the node, and that turns it into a Bezier curve. And the cool thing is, if you hold the Control and Shift key, you can manipulate these handles independently from each other. See how close you can get the mask to the actual subject? This is great for things like masking out lightsaber prop blades. Oh, that looks good. That looks really nice. But you'll notice, even though we've completed our mask, nothing has been taken out. See, the fruit's still here. What we need to do is go over to our node tree, right-click, and create an alpha output with this button right here. That creates a little blue output node. We're just going to drag this little blue square to the output node, and that creates an alpha channel. And so now our subject is properly masked out. Now, how do we rotoscope it in Resolve? This is where Resolve absolutely shines with motion graphics. Right here in the edit page, we don't have to do anything crazy. We'll just go to the beginning of our video, right? Let's move Harkinian down a little bit. Over here, if you click this button here to open the inspector, on any clip down here on the timeline, you can inspect several different parameters, such as the transform, cropping, dynamic zoom, even the composite, the opacity of an object, how fast something plays back if it's video or GIF media. You can stabilize it right from here, lens correct, even change the scaling filters. We're just going to work in the transform window right here. So let's go ahead and click our King Harkinian media down here, and we can manipulate the position and the zoom, the rotation angle, all right from here. So we're going to move him down a little bit by manipulating the Y position down. And then we'll click on our FL Studio Fruit. And we'll move it a little over to the right, a little bit downwards, and we'll rotate it counterclockwise and position it just right where we want it to be, right? You see this little button right down here in the lower left corner of the viewer? If you click that, whatever you have selected on the timeline, if it's video media, you can actually grab and manipulate it right here in the viewer. Now, this little dot right here in the center is the anchor point. If you drag and move that, now whenever we want to rotate our subject, it will rotate around this point as an anchor. See these little diamonds next to all of these transform parameters? These are keyframes, and we can view them by pressing this button right here, which opens up the keyframe viewer. All of our parameters are right here, and you can see what you've created keyframes for by these orange diamonds. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to create a keyframe for the entire transform parameter, so it makes it just a little bit easier. And what we're going to do, now unfortunately, Resolve does not have hold frames yet. Blackmagic, if you're listening to me right now, please add hold keyframes so we can step in and out of animations. That would make things so much easier for this kind of movement. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in. And we're just going to start moving our playhead left and right, frame by frame, by just using the arrow keys on the keyboard. That's the cool thing. You just use the arrow keys. Right? So we're going to move forwards until the next frame where he moves. But we're going to go to one frame before that and create another transform keyframe. So what we've essentially done is created our own manual hold keyframe. So now when we go to the right, we can move this, and we can start animating, and we can just press the left and right arrow keys to move between frames. So I don't have to jump between the viewer and this. I can just do it all at once. And once again, Resolve comes in clutch with the middle mouse button. I can just move around the workspace just by using the middle mouse without disrupting anything. You can even move around the workspace down here at the bottom using the middle mouse button. Vegas sort of can, but it's a lot different and it's not as snappy. All right, I have just finished. Whew, that is some tedious work. But if we press the Z key while the cursor is over the viewer, it brings it back to normal size, and we can turn off this overlay so we don't see those lines, and we go right back to the beginning of the video and see the fruits of our labor. It looks a lot more polished here in Resolve than it did in Vegas. Vegas is really finicky on keeping everything nice and lined up because it's easier to move things in Resolve with how you have direct control over the exact value with a slider. So you have such fine control over everything. And we can see all of our keyframes that we made right over here in this window. And if we press this little keyframe button right here, we can see any keyframes on whatever clip we have selected down here in the timeline. And we can move them and manipulate them however we like. This is one of the many skills you can use to make funny YouTube poops. You can mask out all sorts of elements from your videos, rotoscope things in to make it look like a character is holding something or wearing something as a hat. The possibilities are endless. And I have no idea how to end videos, so I don't know. Here's an end card for you. In the next video, I think I'll tackle sentence mixing. This is one of my best skills, and it takes a while to develop, but I promise you it's super easy. You'll see.